I spoke to a lot of people and they said, oh, that's just normal, or my horse shies or what have you. But it actually turns out it's not. It's not normal. I had a lot of anxiety and apprehension about those first 2 legs going out the gate with 140 riders and thinking, how is he going to behave? Like, this could be really quite a challenge.
Welcome everyone to episode 145 of the Send Nutrition podcast with your host Bryan today. And on today's podcast, we have a very special interview with Sky Muir, who is the owner of Stoick The Vast. He is a Waler cross Arab endurance horse. And the reason for Sky coming on today is this is a real life example of how to improve your horse's behavior through nutrition and how this actually impacted Sky's preparation for the 160 kilometre Tom Quilty Gold Cup event. And this journey is quite inspirational in terms of it unlocked his performance being a calmer, more controlled horse. And in this episode, we'll explore how nutrition and a balanced diet can really influence the behavior, focus, and recovery of your horse, especially the demanding endurance events like the 160 kilometre Tom Quilty Gold Cup, where to complete is to win, which is a true testament to horsemanship. So I have Sky here today. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Bryan. How are you?
Yeah, really good, Sky. And thank you so much for your time for coming on today. And when we met you at the Tom Quilty, we were really taken back by your story regarding the behavior of your horse and the change you saw when you switched to Sen. And this will give our listeners a great insight into a result that is a real testament to your care and attention, but also how nutrition can influence the behavior of a horse. And we'll also go through the science behind this. So let's just start off with your experience and background in horses.
Sure, no problem. I wouldn't say like I'm a really seasoned endurance rider. I've been riding probably 5 or 6 years in endurance. I've been riding Stoick The Vast for only 12 months, which is, quite an achievement to go out there and try and get a quilty buckle on that, I think. Leading up to this ride, I completed all the rides on the calendar with pretty good vet rate and quite happy with him. But, by no means am I a professional or I'm just really somebody who loves horses and enjoys the fact that endurance gives us our longest time in the saddle with your horse. And I feel like, you get such a beautiful, deep connection by riding your horse for 8 hours. It's probably not for everyone, but, that's where I feel like I get connected. So Stoick is only 8 years old and he's been somewhat challenging, I would say. He's slightly erratic out on course. We were doing a lot of rides that I wasn't happy with, not because we didn't vet through, we did vet through, but really just his behaviour out on track wasn't the way that I felt, was respectful to others or something that I enjoyed doing. He would rush a ride, he would shy a lot and really just feel like he had no self-preservation. Things were, he put me in dangerous situations quite often. And I knew that he wasn't a dangerous horse because he is the most beautiful horse. Like he has this really deep connection to everyone he meets. And I just think, I knew that wasn't in his nature, but we'd get to a ride and he'd be hot and fizzy. I switched to Sen back in February after having a conversation with a friend at a ride. And that sort of really changed everything for us. Probably 6 weeks for your feed to really kick in.
Yep.
And then I noticed that we'd go out on training rides. He wouldn't shy anymore. He just felt calmer. I felt like I could have a bit of a canter with him without feeling like I had to hold on to him or hold on to something in case he did put a nice big shy in or get a bit, too keen and not be able to stop him. And then, of course, we got to this year's Quilty, and I had a lot of anxiety and apprehension about those first two legs going out the gate with 140 riders and thinking, how is he going to behave? Like, this could be really quite a challenge and perhaps an unsafe challenge. But the horse that I took out was almost unrecognisable. He walked out the gate. We got into a beautiful trot in the first 5 kilometres, and then he just found his pace. He was calm. I stopped and helped a few people, which would have been unheard of leading up to this ride. And, he was more than happy for 20-odd horses to go past us, and he still was happy to stand there and let me help this friend of mine. And then consistently rode the ride without any dips in his behaviour. And his attitude to work was outstanding. It just blew me away, to be honest with you.
His emotional steadiness, so that like more even and more controlled behaviour, it came after around that 6-week mark. When we look at the physiology of the horse, those gut microbes from that previous diet would have to balance themselves out and be effective. And as Sky had described, that's the change that we're looking for when you have that gut-brain connection in a horse to really bring through that less reactive and more controllable behaviour. To see this come to fruition in one of the toughest endurance events, I bet you have to be happy with that, Sky.
Through the whole event, he was a different horse. Never did he become. He was just so consistent. I was, I'd come in from each leg, and Louise, who bred him, she was there strapping for me. I was, so lucky for that. She's like, how was he out there? And I just said he was brilliant. Like I was shocked every time. Nothing really changed between legs, even when he became tired, which, I didn't actually really even notice that he'd become tired. I think I noticed as you go out on your third leg, on your fourth leg, they sort of lose a little bit of motivation because you're heading back out yet again along roads and what have you. And they lose a little bit of motivation, but he wasn't losing energy. It says a lot about, the feed and how it almost spreads itself out to give them consistent energy throughout 160 kilometres.
Yeah, and when you compare the nutrient profile of your previous feed, what Sen brings is a more even balance of that fibre, fat, and that sugar and starch and protein. And we know that every horse is treated as individual, but I'd like to just ask you, how did you find the actual terrain? Because I've heard from a few other riders it was pretty hard and tough with a lot of exposed rock.
It was quite a brutal ride, yeah. I guess, we were lucky enough here that we did a test event on it. So I was aware that the terrain was going to be quite rocky and that a lot of it would have to be walked. I'd get to a rocky patch and say, no, mate, we're walking. And a lot of the horses that I was riding with would trot off. They continue quite quickly over it. There was also in the second leg this hill climb the people that I was riding with were from Queensland, and I said, look, there's a hill climb coming up. If you think you need to get off your horse before this hill, you should get off. Don't try and get off during the hill because it's literally shale and it is straight up. Like if your horse turns on the hill, no, you go. It's not going to be good. So you commit to the hill. The Waler in him, he's got this beautiful big bum, and that all his strength is coming from that. So he just cruises up these hills. It's like I was looking forward to that. It was like if there's hills in this ride, he's going to love it.
Yeah, and with Stoick's breeding, that Waler Cross Arab, it blends that toughness and stamina. If you want to elaborate on the history. Yeah,
so the Waler was a breed that they bred for the war. They bred all the war horses out of a collection of breeds that they put together basically to breed really good temperament. They needed something that would be calm under a lot of pressure and stress, but to also have that stamina to travel across country that they hadn't travelled across before. You know, like quite often there was deep sand. If you look at a lot of horses that went to Africa and off Normandy, and you know they needed to have something a little bit more than, you know, another breed, for instance. So they did crossbreed, you know, things like Clydesdales, quarter horses, stock horses, and so they have incredibly good feet. We did that whole ride in shoes, no padding, so they have these beautiful, strong feet. They've just got this grit about them that you feel when you ride them. You know, like they're strong horses, and they quite often are a bit more heavy set. And this is where Louise, his breeder, she loved endurance. She's been doing endurance since she was 8 years old, and she wanted, you know, the heart of an Arab, but the stamina of the Waler. And to me, like, it's just, you know, you've got a piece of Australian history that you're riding, which, you know, like, I just think that's so incredible. And he's actually out of the foundation herd of the horses that actually went off to war. So wow. That makes it even more special to me. You know, like, I've got a piece of Australian history that I'm riding, but also, you know, a competitive horse. You know, we're not going out there plodding around because, you know, he's a heavy set horse. He's going out there with work ethic and, you know, that Arab spirit, you know, they're out there to compete. They're competitive horses. You know, it's a perfect combination, I think, as a sport horse.
And you competed in one of the endurance events that has a rich vein of history, because I think is that 59th year? Because it's 60th year to next year?
I think it was 1966.
Yeah, 1966.
I might be wrong with that.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is the 59th running of the Tom Quilty.
Yeah.
So having that history in your horse and in the event, that is truly something very special.
It is something really special, but not the first. Louise competed on his brother Billy in the Winton to Longreach, and I'm not entirely sure the distance of that, but I think it's a very, very long way. And so she did the Winton to Longreach, and she did the Quilty within 2 months of each other, and completed both. So that just goes to show, you know, the stamina of these horses is outstanding.
And I think you have to be commended to Sky, because to go in your first Quilty and have a completion, that's got to be something to be very proud of.
Thank you. Yeah. It was something that I probably made a decision to do maybe 6 months ago, because you never know. I don't think 12 months is long enough to ride a horse and know what they're really capable of. But the funny thing was, Louise sent me a message and said, "Are you considering doing the Quilty?" And I sent back, "Yes, at this point I am." But really unsure, you know, like, is it the right thing to do when you don't really know your horse well enough? And I know plenty of people do, like plenty of people borrow a horse and ride the Quilty. But that's not really what it was about for me. It was about, you know, like, am I doing the right thing by my horse at this stage? Is he capable of it? And certainly leading up to it, I had a few doubts in the last month whether or not I was doing the right thing. But yeah, the last week coming into it, I was 100% felt positive that yes, we're doing the right thing. I had no doubt in my mind we would get a completion out of this. And each leg when I came in, Louise was like, "How's he feel?" I said, "You don't need to worry about him. He feels 100%. And I just said that the whole way through. And I think that positivity goes such a long way as well. You know, for their energy going out there on track, you know, that you're feeling, no, we got this. We're doing this. This is 100% something that we can achieve. And I think, you know, the confidence goes through your body into theirs, and, you know, they read your thoughts anyway. Like, they're incredible animals, horses.
Yeah, there's no chinks in your armor, as they say. And when you manifest that positivity, and we say that a lot on our podcast, that the horse can really pick this up, and you've just had that full testament. And when you look at the last few legs that Stoick went through, was his mental sharpness and enthusiasm still there?
It was definitely still there. It was there the whole way. That was another thing. Like, drinking out on track, we stopped at normally, in previous rides, we stop at a drink station and he would just be rushing through that. He'd be just wanting to get out there and get it finished. No drinking, no stopping. He'd, push through the barrels. At one ride, we ended up in a barrel because he was just so, not interested in drinking. He just stepped straight into the water bucket and, not even that's how sort of fizzy his brain was. But, we stopped at every water station. We were able to have a chat to other riders and then, just moving forward. So, yeah, incredible.
And with his post-race recovery, how did he go with this?
Well, I came in fifth heavyweight. I came in sixth heavyweight. And I must say I was really relieved that I wasn't fifth because I didn't want to do a best condition workout because I hadn't been practicing anything like that. But he would have easily done a best condition workout. Wow. He had no swelling in his legs. His recovery was remarkable. I mean, he was bright, happy to eat his breakfast. I didn't see any signs that he had really even done a ride like that. When I came home on Monday and I popped him back in his paddock, he went for a gallop up the end of the paddock, came back, he jumped the little creek that's in there, and I filmed it and I sent it to Louise. I said, has he even done anything, this horse? He just was so happy. Like I said, I just haven't experienced that before. So I can say it's most probably the consistency of the feeds that are going into him equals the energy that's coming out of him and the recovery as well.
Yeah, we had that pure balance is showing through, and we do get that a bit in the past few years with riders and trainers saying it's like they haven't run or they haven't even run the 160 kilometres, and that's what you basically said as well.
Yeah, and I felt in my own body really good, and that meant that he was obviously riding nice and even. His strides felt nice and even. When a horse is getting fatigued and they start favouring their favourite side, or and it sort of twists your body a bit. I've found that in previous rides, as they start to burn their energy and they hit a bit of a flat spot, you're not riding well either because they're just not moving nicely. I feel like I could ride 160 kilometres today.
Yeah, wow.
I've had a really great recovery as well, and I just think that not losing energy throughout the ride and not having to make him work has done me a heap of favours as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's all the puzzle pieces coming together, and we say it a lot that we provide that puzzle piece of nutrition for your horse, so then you can worry about all the other aspects of training and yourself and your fitness as well. We sort of take that burden off, knowing that the right nutrients are going in.
I'll run through what I have him on, if you like.
Yeah. Yep.
So I've got him on the Sen Complete. I feed him the oil, and I've got him on the Extra Balance as well, which I did only add a month ago. Yep. I was using Digestive EQ, and then a month ago I switched to the Extra Balance, and I've got him on Your Salt.
Yep.
And I myself use salt. I take Celtic salt. I think it's Celtic salt, not Celtic salt. I'm not too sure how you say it.
Celtic salt.
Yep. So I dissolve, a tablespoon of that in a litre of water, and every 3 days I drink that.
Yep. Just
to balance my own body, and so then you don't have to drink as much water. So I understand, the intake and how salt is really important to all bodies, and how we need it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what we've found over the years when we do our nutrition consults is that missing link. And it's so simple that the salt really helps their thirst activation, hydrates their digestive tract to then really lowers that risk of that impaction colic. But overall, there's a lot of body functions that rely on salt, including the acid in their stomach to make that hydrochloric acid amount. And when we looked at all the diets that we do over the years, a lot of the common deficiencies were coming in that there wasn't enough salt in the diet. And it's so simple to correct in that sense.
Yeah, it is simple, and I think that's why it's overlooked a lot. You know, people think, how could salt really make a big difference? But even in your muscle recovery, you know, like I've had no cramping in my legs, and I assume that he's the same, you know, because your body's absorbing everything you're putting in. The salt sort of is taking it to where it needs to go in your body. And so you're not getting muscle cramps or dehydration. You feel hydrated all the time.
And for our first-time listeners that probably haven't deep dived our podcast series, the reason why we do add the salt on top of the feed is because there's not enough room to include it into the pellets or a certain feed. So there's no hard feed that can include that requirement of the 10 grams per 100 kg body weight per day. And as we go on about, it's about consistency because the kidneys are filtering the blood. They're trying to normalize all the electrolytes on an hourly basis within your horse, and adding it fresh each day is really ensuring it and not taking shortcuts, because when we do consults and try and correct the ways of some horse owners, they would only add the salt or electrolytes at the last minute, and it's not like that. You have to be more consistent with salt because of the way the horse's physiology and their mechanisms of how they use it, just like us humans as well. And then I'll give a bit more about the science behind this behaviour change and what we're trying to achieve at SEN. So the key points to this is when you look at the blood sugar stability within a horse, this equals a calmer mind and a more balanced energy release. And that's what we're trying to aim for, particularly in the endurance horse, because obviously you need that throughout the ride and not have that sporadic energy release, because then you'll fatigue earlier. In our balanced diet, we include enough omega-3 fatty acids from a source that's not rancid, which is really stable, and this really helps the anti-inflammatory response, and particularly in recovery. What we're trying to do with gut health is really get that gut-brain axis really functioning, because this equals a more focused and less reactive horse, as Sky has described in this real-world example. And we're giving enough recovery nutrients, so reducing that post-exercise pain and inflammation, because the horse can anticipate this happening and may act up or have an influence in behavior. So that's a sufficient amount of antioxidants, and that's really going to help the muscle health at the end of the day recover from that exercise and not use that antioxidant load on unnecessary ingredients within the feed program. And as we've said in previous podcasts, SEN is a more pure way of feeding, because everything that we are putting inside the horse's diet is functional and there for a reason.
Yep. The other thing I noticed that after previous rides, and just 80s even, on other feeds that I was using, he would drop weight quite considerably after an 80K ride. And, you know, like I've had his rug off a couple of days in a row here with the sun shining, and he looks as good as when I went in there. Yeah, I was sort of anticipating, I guess, a bit of weight loss. Unless it comes later, he looks incredible right now. Yeah.
That's a testament to the balance. It's also a testament to your care and attention of him as well, Sky. And and for our listeners, that if you are, even if you're not feeding SEN, this was sort of the process that Sky went through. Like, she was introduced by a friend, but around a month out from the Tom Quilty, she did check in with us just to see if she's got the right balance, as you did.
Yeah, I did. I thought, you know what, I'll just see that I've, you know, because it's quite a stressful thing preparing for your, well, probably for every, I don't know yet, but every large ride that you do, you are analysing every single thing that you're doing and, you know, is this diet right? So I just thought I'd go in for have a food consultation with you guys, and I certainly did expect to get a call centre with somebody that might just run through a few figures with me and go, oh yeah, well you need to do that. But I actually got you on the phone, and I'd been cramming like all your podcasts in for a couple of months, and when you answered the phone, I was so starstruck. I was like, you know, I think I struggled with words, but after our conversation, I rang up all my friends that would listen to me and go, do you know who you get if you call Sen? And they laughed and they said, I know, isn't it great? And I was actually blown away that you do so much groundwork with your product. And I think, you know, for me, that just really concreted in. I was on the right track and doing the right thing. So
yeah,
thank you.
Oh no, thank you, Sky, for that review, because we're so vested in our clients and potential client success that we understand every horse is an individual. Everyone has their own training and different environments, and we want to really help at that micro level. And Peter and I, as you saw, we don't leave it to a full team of staff. Yes, we do have staff. We're still actually considered a small business. We have less than 10 staff in the office, and actually we're one of a rare breed now because a lot of the other companies are being corporatized or taken over. So we still want to give that one-on-one support because this is what we are passionate about. We're passionate about horse health. We're also passionate about human health, and we want to do the right thing by our horse owners and our clients. Yep.
And it really shows. And I'm super impressed. And you picked me. I'm just an ordinary person that, you know, has horses. It's not a hobby. It's a lifestyle I have. You know, like I invest in their health, but I'm just a small time rider here in Tasmania, and I go out and enjoy the sport because I love to ride a horse, and I love the people that do endurance. I've actually cross-trained him a little bit with polo cross as well. I was looking for something to do in the off season, and my partner rides polo cross. Nice. I was thinking I would never do that, but anyway, it turns out that is a very fun sport. And you know, like I had the privilege to play just D grade here in Tasmania with another group of fantastic people that love their horses as well. So yeah, we're pretty lucky that we can have that all here in such a small state.
Oh, I've fallen in love with Tasmania. That was the first time I've been there, and just so pure and natural, the scenery, that even when we were speaking to you and a few other people at the Tom Quilty, they said go the scenic route back to Hobart Airport, past the Great Lake, and it was like a movie. It is like every 10 kilometres there was a different scene to a movie, and a beautiful natural air. It's such a
you don't tell too many people because we want to keep it a secret. We just, you know, like I was born here in Tasmania. I was born in a little hippie community out the back of Sheffield, and it was a pure upbringing, you know, with no power, no TV, no outside influences really. Like it was a beautiful childhood. And I moved away when I was 16 to, you know, what I thought was a better way to live, and it wasn't. I've come back here. I'm so passionate about Tasmania. I love this state, and I get excited. You know, like I ride the beaches, and then I ride the hills and the mountains, and they're 5 minutes from each other. Wow. Like you just, you know, like we are truly blessed.
It's such a beautiful place, and like we can't thank you enough, Sky, for your support of us, like coming on here, telling your testimony, but also supporting us as a small business. And you can, and we'd like to actually give you a plug as well, because Peter and I went to your small business, which is a cafe called, it's 33 Cups, is that?
33 Cups.
Yeah, 33 Cups. And we went there very, very hungry and were just served the most amazing lunch that we had. It was Mother's Day. They found us a seat. It was perfect. If you want to take our listeners through your history with food.
Sure. Yeah. So, I left Tasmania, 16, went seeking, my interest was food. I loved horses too, but that wasn't going to sort of be a career path for me. But like all things, I felt very close to food and the way that it made people feel. I grew up with my mum being an incredible cook, and we lived out of our garden. So, it was quite remote. It was an hour and a half to town. So we didn't eat a lot of meat, and Mum had an incredible garden that she grew. So all meals were made out of what we had. She'd preserved food. And we had a woofer farm, which not everyone would be aware, but it's called Willing Workers on Organic Farms. So you have a lot of international travellers come. They put in a day's work, and what they got out was a home-cooked meal and accommodation. So as a child, we had a lot of European travellers come through our house, and Mum would they were just blown away by what she could produce out of a garden. Like a lot of people think, oh yeah, I mean, now I'm a big meat eater now, and I do love good meat. But, predominantly as a child, we grew up vegetarian and just eating really quite exotic meals, probably, compared to what a lot of people grew up with. And so my passion for cooking came from that. But I also think, I've been lucky enough that I didn't grow up with phones and TVs and stuff like that. So my creative mind developed. And when I think about food, I think, I get the whole picture. So if I'm imagining a dish to put together, I get a whole visual. Okay, so how that profile would go together, and then, almost tasting it before I put it on a plate. Wow. And I'm lucky that's sort of how my brain works. And I did my apprenticeship on the Sunshine Coast. I made my way up there and did it through a large hotel, and then transferred in my fourth year down to Melbourne and did a bit of time in Novotel and Sofitel. And then from there I went overseas and worked in the UK and lived in Germany for a while. So I got a bit of overseas exposure as well, which was, amazing, incredible. Came back to Tasmania and started up a small business supplying cakes and stuff and food to small cafes. And really I've sort of been in business for myself since then. Small businesses just normally supply. And then back in 2011, going back from that, we lived in Canberra for a short 2 years, and I worked at the Institute of Sport. So that was actually a really good foundation for a lot of things, because the Institute of Sport was 2011, leading up to the 2012 Olympic Games, and we had a lot of athletes in the village. So we were feeding 400 athletes through the Institute, and that was all governed by a nutritionist. So, every athlete had their own diet plan.
Wow. And
as a chef there, we would have to work with that diet plan. So I actually learned a heap about nutrition and feeding athletes and how their bodies worked. Some things I questioned, like the use of margarine over butter. Some of the products that, that were man designed and not, like nature designed. I just sort of questioned whether or not that really works for your body. But, in a big organisation, you're not going to change the world. But I did manage to get butter in the muffins there, which I was very proud about.
Very good.
However, a lot of athletes didn't do so well that year, and I don't know if it was the fact that
The muffins.
I made the muffins so good that they ate too many. So, but went from there and moved back to Tasmania, and I started up 33 Cups. And it's been 14 years in this one business. I changed the menu seasonally, and I have the best staff. They allow me to, take the weekends away. I work 4 days a week and in the business, and then, so I have time to ride. The hours that I've created are horse hours, so I have time to go home and ride my horse. But I also employ a lot of people that ride horses as well. So, my chef, she's got 6 horses and she does hunting. I've had, at one stage there, I think I had 5 people that rode horses. So, the hours that I offered in the business suited a lot of people's lifestyles. And I just love that. I can offer that. I think I've got about 15 employees now, and we're very flexible. And that is, that I'm very proud of that business. It's solely been my work. Like I've never had a partner in that business. It's just been me. And that's, sometimes been tough when I can't turn to someone and say, what should we do here or what have you? Like it's sort of all on my shoulders. But, like now that I've matured, I find that powerful. And I love that part of it.
You've got to be commended because small businesses is tough, especially cafes, that even from my experience in certain family members back in the past that have had cafes. And I think with your whole rounded view on food and your creativity, I think that really fuels your success there. Have you ever thought of going on MasterChef?
No, I haven't, but I did do a little bit of work with Ben Milbourne when he had been on MasterChef. I filmed with him a little bit and did a few episodes. And then I went down to the Taste of Tasmania and did a bit of a workshop down there as well. So, yeah, I hadn't been on MasterChef. I used to work with George Columbias at Sofitel as well, and which was, I didn't know who he was at the time. I just thought he was he was a fourth-year apprentice, the same as me, and I didn't really think he was anyone special. But it turns out, he went on to do incredible things. But no, I don't have any ambition to go on anything like that. But just to make my own hometown happy and offer a good service, consistent service, and consistency is the key to everything. Like I don't tend to change a lot erratically, or like I have been consistent over 14 years. I open 7 days a week. I don't close before the closing time. We're open when we say we're open. We close for a few days over the year, which is, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day. And then we take another 3 over New Year's Eve. But I open public holidays. I'm just there so that people don't have to guess whether or not what you're doing. And I think that goes a long way in business too.
Yeah, 100% in all aspects, that consistency. And the location of 33 Cups is in Ulverstone, which is right up north of Tasmania.
We're on the northwest coast. Yep, we have the ocean at our doorstep here, and from Devonport through to Burnie, you can drive the coast. So you're basically looking at the ocean the entire drive. It's actually a little lifestyle town. You can ride your bike everywhere. There's bike tracks being put right through to Devonport. It's relatively flat. We've got the river that runs through the middle of it. So, most houses in this town have got a beautiful either ocean view, rural view, river view. It's an affordable place to live. There's free parking in the main street. That goes a long way in small communities. And, to have a good cafe in a town is really, really important. And when I looked at where would I put a cafe? Because once you live sort of away from where you grew up, you start looking at it differently. And I was looking at, if I was to move back to Tasmania and set up a business, where would I want to be? And in the middle of the coast, in the middle of the northwest coast, made sense to me. And it just so happened, I didn't know Ulverston was going to be such an incredible little town, but it's so supportive. And there's so many people here, so many women here in business. I was really inspired when I came back, because it seemed like every business I went into were run by women, like confident, happy women that were doing a really great job. And I was very inspired by that. I've been lucky enough to raise my children in this business and, and just be really part of the community. And that was very apparent during COVID too, here in Tasmania, when we didn't get it near as bad as what you guys did on the mainland. But during that lockdown period, my regulars came in every day and got coffee. And because it became a place where people could sort of tell you stuff, like whether or not they were struggling at home, being isolated, or, they had, if they were, they were going through things, they'd come in and speak to me. So I felt really close to the community after COVID, that I was there for them.
Like a form of therapy.
As a form of therapy, and just, a consistency as well. I never closed the doors through any of that period of time. I was still there 7 days a week. And, it's just, I don't know, I feel really connected to this community. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think you're definitely doing something right, being around for 14 plus years. And if any of our listeners are in Tasmania, it is absolutely worth it to go up north into Ulverston and check it out. So, Sky, I think we will wrap this podcast up and give some key takeaways for our listeners. And just to, if your horse is still competing in a good mindset, but you think there's something not right, looking at that nutrition balance. Nutrition doesn't just feed the body with calories. There's some things that we got to look at that it actually does change their mind. So small nutrition tweaks can equal big behavior improvements. If you look at the focus and recovery and resilience all start in the gut and at the cellular level. That's what we're trying to portray at Sen, and try and educate as many horses owners as we can, because this will benefit the horses at the end of the day. And I just think you should be absolutely congratulated on all aspects of this Tom Quilty success that you've had, because as that motto is, to complete is to win. It's not only the smart feeding choices or nutrition, it lies in your preparation and management, and you have to be commended on that as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you. I really do appreciate you stopping and talking to me on Sunday. And yeah, it's been I'm excited, because I'm excited about the next 10 years and sticking to your feed and getting consistency out of my horses. You know, I've got 4 horses and they're all on this now. And I've got a young one coming up. She's 5. She's out of the Marloo stud as well. And, it's just, I'm super excited to see, how this feed's going to bring out the best in these horses. And to stumble across something, not that, you're definitely out there and there's a lot of people feeding it, but to stumble across it at this point, which was a really vital and important time, I'm just so grateful, because it could have been a very, very different experience for us. If I had have stuck to what I was doing, I don't believe that we would have had a completion, and I do believe that it would have been very unenjoyable for me. So I think, make the switch, people, and give it time, give it that 6 to 8 weeks for it to really kick in and make a difference to your horse.
Yeah, and Sky, we just really appreciate you sharing the journey, because when you're telling Peter and I at the Quilty, we just feel it's an inspirational story for a horse owner or a rider, when you do get the feed right, what it can unlock in your horse. And I think by Peter and I being at the coalface, we do learn a lot of things. Like on that trip to Tasmania, as we've said in this podcast, consistency is the key. And for us being a horse feed and supplement company, the consistency to give Tasmania a good supply of a quality feed is what is required to not go out of stock. We've got very good ingredients secured on the east coast of Australia, unlike in previous years, to keep the costs down and then also ensure that supply from Melbourne into our Tasmanian warehouses, into our Tasmania stores. So that consistency of access is very important. That's what we've learned.
Yep.
And yeah, I think overall we can't thank everyone enough for their support, because we had a lot of clients come up to us telling us the success they've had with their horses on Sen, and Sky was a perfect example with Stoick on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Bryan. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Sky. And if you are a first-time listener, please have a look at the other podcasts. You'll find a wealth of information and interviews with key. There's an FEI vet. There's a lot of other good guests that we've interviewed that can really help give you motivation and information that you may not know about your horse or the physiology of the horse to help them thrive in their chosen discipline. And again, thanks, Sky, for coming on here, and we will have another podcast to you guys really soon.
Fabulous. Thank you, Bryan.